Hello and welcome to Linux Server Training 101. My name is Don Crawley. I'm from soundtraining.net. We're the Seattle, Washington-based provider of accelerated training for IT professionals. This time we're doing configuring Windows Linux file sharing with Samba. It's based on Chapter 10 in my book, The Accidental Administrator, Linux Server Step-by-Step Configuration Guide. The book is available through Amazon and other channels if you'd like to follow along, but it is certainly not required for the video. The Linux distro that I'm going to use is CentOS version 5.8, and the Samba version is 3. The things that I'm going to show you are pretty universal, so should work with pretty much any version of Linux or any version of Samba. You may have to change some things such as file locations, but certainly most of them should work as long as you bear them in mind that some of the file locations may be slightly different. What can you do with Samba? Well, the main thing that most people seem to use it for is for sharing files and printers with Microsoft clients from a Linux server. As you can see in the diagram, there's a Linux server running Samba with a printer attached to it, and it's configured for file and printer sharing. And then you have Windows clients, maybe Windows 7 or XP or even older Windows clients, connecting and accessing file shares in the printer. You can also use it for authentication to set it up as a Windows domain controller, although I don't see that done nearly as much as the file sharing. In order to configure Samba, there's two files that you need to know about, one which you edit directly and one which you edit indirectly. You edit directly the smb.conf file, which is the configuration file. It's typically located in /etc/samba/smb.conf. The file that you edit indirectly with the smb password command is named smb password, and it is the file that synchronizes Samba passwords with Linux passwords. Let's take a look at the smb.conf file. This again is the main configuration file that you're going to be working with, and depending on your version of Linux, perhaps there's some includes, but the things that I'm going to show you are all things that are part of the smb.conf file, either directly or through include statements. There are two parts to it, the global options and then the share definitions. Let's first of all take a look at the global options. This is where you can set things like network options. That's where you set the workgroup name, server name, interfaces, allowed subnets. Logging options is where you configure the log location and the maximum log size. Standalone server options is security. What type of authentication are you going to implement? Domain members option specifies the backend where user information is stored. And the domain controllers options is the actual backend where that user information is stored. Browser control options is where you manage your network browser settings. This is not your web browser, this is network browser, so you can see shares on the network. Name resolution controls how Samba manages NetBIOS names. And printing options does pretty much what the name implies, controls whether the list of printers is loaded automatically and how Windows clients handle drivers. And then finally, the file system options are available for you to use if you're working with a file system that supports extended attributes. Now, frankly, most of the things that you're going to configure, you don't need to configure. You can just go with the default settings. What we're going to work on is the network options and then the share definitions. And let's take a look at the share definitions. This is at the bottom of smb.conf. And this is where you have default shares that are configured. The default shares are your home directories. That's for your users' home directories and printers, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then net logon, which is used for domain logons. Profiles, if you're implementing specific roving profile shares. And then public, which sets up a read-only publicly accessible directory. Again, you probably will only use homes and printers, and you may configure a dedicated SMB directory as well, which I'm going to do in the demo. The steps to configure Samba, it's really pretty straightforward. You modify /etc/samba/smb.conf, you restart SMB, and you create the SMB users. And if you do it all correctly, then your Windows clients will be able to access those shares. Here are the prerequisites. In order to follow along exactly the way I'm doing things, you'll need a computer running Linux. The one I'm using, again, is CentOS version 5.8. Must have Samba installed. If you don't, then you can use yum install Samba to do that. And a Linux user named user01 with a password of p@ss1234. You'll also need a computer running Windows, and the one I'm going to use is Windows 7. I'm running it in a virtual machine, but it doesn't matter whether it's a VM or a physical box. And you'll need a Windows user, also named user01 with a password of p@ss1234. Here's the disclaimer. This video is provided solely as courtesy